Welcome, everyone. I have a very special guest today, and we are going to discuss a very special topic that I had been wanting to explore for a long time. The guest today, I'm happy to introduce Adam Butler. He's a psychedelic philosopher and DMT psychonaut focusing on mental health, neuroplasticity, and self-exploration. He's also author of the book Butler's DMT Field Guide, which summarizes his life-saving and transformational journey after using DMT hundreds of times for medicinal, meditative, and spiritual purposes. Welcome, Adam. Super excited to have you today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for bringing the cat along too. That'll help give the nice calming energy for sure.
So I would love to hear your history behind like getting interested in DMT and why, what motivated you to explore DMT consciousness?
It was kind of forced upon me, honestly, and that seems to be a pretty common narrative of DMT in particular, but I think psychedelics probably in general is that uh, they kind of expose themselves and find their way to you when needed. My story, it started off really dark and nasty, just to be perfectly honest with you. I approached psychedelics for their therapeutic value because I was really in a deep mental health funk. Really no other way to word it, but I was suicidal and I was at a point in my life where, I was going to walk off into the woods and really not come back. And it wasn't because I had one bad day or one bad event or, I had a week or two of things not go my way. I had basically every foundational aspect of my life completely fall apart. Now, in hindsight and in 2020, it was all due to my own making. It's not like, woe is me, I had tragedy happen to me. I caused all of the crap in my life to happen. But it was after a culmination of a couple years of just horrible of event after event where um, I really had to take a hard look in the mirror and I felt as though psychedelics potentially offered me an opportunity to do the inner work that I needed. And yeah, I don't say it lightly that they did truly save my life because they changed my whole perspective on basically everything.
What was your before diving into deep into your DMT experience? Did you do a lot of research on DMT, or were you kind of like, was it like a spontaneous thing?
So in my late teens and 20s, I had experimented with shrooms and LSD, in the college kind of party setting. I had maybe done it a handful of times, maybe a dozen or so. But other than that, um, I hadn't explored psychedelics really for a 20-year period. So I'm 44 years old now, and I had basically this midlife crisis and all of this craps happen around 40, 41 years old. So it really wasn't until again later on in my life that I started looking into it further, and it was because that it was becoming more popular in the news and you were hearing more stories of the veterans coming back and getting really good therapeutic value from shrooms or ketamine and I really just started looking into that research. I was somebody that I've never been on prescription drugs. I don't like the idea of synthetic chemicals, so the idea of shrooms being natural and then I'm sure we'll get into the qualities of DMT, but the fact that it is endogenous and that it is produced naturally in our own body, as well as in all mammals and in thousands of plants, I felt very comfortable knowing that these molecules were very powerful. But I felt more comfortable exploring them because of their natural and organic qualities than going the other route. And I do want to add a big part of this story is I'm coming on, well, I'm over 4 years sober of alcohol, and that was a major part of it too, because I think a large part of society really does drown themselves in alcohol and prescription pills, and instead of doing the deep inner work and looking within and really trying to find the root of the problem, they did what I did, which is run for years and years and sweep it under the rug. And um, in my particular case, I had, really good career success, material wealth. I had everything on paper, so it was really easy for me to kind of brush it off and play off like nothing was wrong until until everything was came collapsing down. But then it became quite obvious how messed up my foundations actually were. So now, the whole point of writing the book and sharing my story is to try to help people, ideally, I don't want to say avoid going through some of the crap that I've been through, because your last guest, Amit, was talking about the power of that hero's journey and how everybody kind of has to go through this rebuilding process. And I just had a buddy reach out to me the other day, and he asked for a personal meeting, and he lost his father recently. He's been battling alcohol. He's had some friends disassociate with him because of his actions, and he was in a really really shitty spot. And I looked at him sincerely and heartfeltly and said, it's just going to be hard to take, but I'm happy for you. Like, I'm so happy that you're in this dark, horrible place where everything is kind of being brought up, because now you can finally purge it. So, um, I share my story with ideally the opportunity to teach, and to hopefully give some pointers, but not to necessarily prevent anybody from going through it, because we're all going to have our moments in life that we're forced to kind of whatever dig deep. So.
Yeah, I resonate with you a lot. I'm not anti-medicine, but I'm more interested in exploring natural way of healing, because I feel like nowadays we have so many band-aid fixes rather than trying to get to the root cause and facing the real problem that needs to be solved. Although I've not tried DMT, I feel like it gives that space to see things as they are. That's my hunch about DMT, where it opens up a lot of those veils.
And I think it fits more within that space of, and I don't know, when my episode will come out to your relative ones, but you just had the guest on talking about holistic health and biohacking, and I think this kind of falls within that line of biohacking, not some medicinal cheat code or some um, external solution, even though we're talking about externally ingesting psychedelics, and that we are using it as a catalyst to set something off, but it's not psychedelics as the magic pill cure-all that fixes everything. Not at all. That's what puts the spotlight on your natural physiology. It's what finds your stressors and the indicators in your body that you really need to address. And then I think it comes up with natural ways of addressing, excuse me. And that I think maybe that's, now that I'm several years into this process and into this integration process, uh, a big part of the message now is that, and maybe we should start with this, and I started my book with the disclaimer. Now, I don't think psychedelics are for everybody. DMT is definitely not for everybody. I'm not a doctor. I recommend doing your own research. Definitely approach these molecules with respect and reverence. That they're extremely powerful. So, I'm not suggesting that everybody should go out and do them, but for some people, that's what they need to get that shakeup, to remove the proverbial plaque, to get that perception shift that's needed. But the ideal thing is that you don't need to continually do shrooms or DMT to have this level of contentment and connection to your body and to source and to others. That there are many other ways of doing it, through meditation, through those holistic measures, through cold plunges, through exercise, through yoga, through walks in the woods, through making love. There's a bunch of ways of knowing that you're greater than, knowing that you're connected to source. And that's kind of the big picture of all of this is, and I know we're kind of jumping around, but I'm sure, and we'll probably end with the bigger message of, what is the next step of human evolution and the next increase of consciousness. But this is all a part of it. And it all starts with having a true and honest connection with yourself that's not tainted by societal bullshit, through your own negative self-beliefs or thoughts, masked by alcohol, pills, all of that. And however people can get to that moment where they take some time for themselves and do their inner reflections, uh, like I said, however people get to that proverbial mountaintop, it's so beautiful once you're there, because you can see the genuine smile in my face and others who have been there, seen it.
That sounds really fascinating. Um, I wanted to, I know you have had hundreds of experiences. Which was the one DMT experience that left a strong impression on you and kind of like was a paradigm shift for you?
I'd say that there were a few of them, if I could point out. And I guess maybe before I get into those experiences, just kind of fully answer your question prior about how I kind of get introduced back again to psychedelics. So, yeah, and I think this is important too because it's not something that you should just randomly do if you have access on a weekend because somebody gave it to you, or that you should, um, listen to this podcast automatically like, oh, I'm going to go smoke DMT. That's going to fix everything. Excuse me. I I I knew that I needed help. I knew that I was really in a dark shitty place, like I said, and I'd be happy to go over into the details of this, but some of the bullet points. I got a restraining order put up against me, which kicked me out of my house, ended an 8-year relationship. I quit a high-paying job that I had had for many years. Into another beautiful relationship, lost that because of my own bullshit. Got another job that was even better, lost that because I threatened to kill a man because of over $900 of discrepancy. Um, Quit everything, took a year and a half off and lived on the road where I spent like 80, 90 grand and just I went to 40 states. I went to all these national parks. I went on that really deep spiritual journey. So I was at a very desperate point, and I don't, hopefully everybody doesn't get to quite that level. But like I said, I knew that I needed help. I was looking in the mirror and I was 40 pounds overweight. I had bags under my eyes. I had lost everything, and it was. And I want to preface it too with, and this is a part of my story that I kind of gloss over, but it's also important that I was raised kind of with a silver spoon in my mouth. I did have every possible advantage growing up. I have amazing parents. I had great grandparents. I was gifted close to $100,000 to start businesses. Um, I went to college for almost 8 years. I've had, like I said, every reason why I should have had every advantage. Truly, there was no reason. I had no obstacles other than ones that I put in front of myself. So I had to really take that into account that there was no one that did this to me, and it was truly of my own making. Um, so that's when I started exploring with shrooms. So I started, doing the research, reading books that I could find, watching podcasts, and I started doing, 2, 3, 4 gram doses. I started pushing it a little bit further, 5, 6, 7 grams, which is, you're getting to some pretty deep psychological spaces. And what happened when I started doing shrooms was a couple things. Um, I felt comfortable being in that psychedelic space beyond my normal natural five senses and what it felt like to have sensory inputs that were beyond what my normal waking state was. But then I really was getting the true deep therapeutic work where I was doing my shadow work, where things were coming to the surface that I couldn't ignore. And it's really easy to lie to your friend or to lie to your therapist or to lie to your loved one, but it's damn near impossible to lie to yourself when you're looking in the mirror on 5 grams of shrooms and you're crying and you're sitting there trying to figure out everything. And um, I after doing months of shrooms and not every day, but a weekly typically, or definitely a few times a month. Um, I thought that this was the path that I should continue to follow to hopefully correct my mental health issues. But I hadn't had that breakthrough epiphany moment. I hadn't had that kind of like one and done, like, oh, I'm good now. And that's where DMT got really dropped into my lap. Um, it seemed to be brought up on podcasts. It seemed to be brought up in books. I had friends seem to bring it up to me, and then I had a friend of mine that had access to it, and he offered it to me. He knew what dark spot that I was in, and how I really needed some help. And so once he let me know that I had access and that it was mine in essence to use, I spent several months reading, The Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman. That's probably the one book I would start with. It goes over really good baseline information about molecule. Looking into work like Andrew Gallimore and some of these other people that um, I thought would have given me a pretty good understanding of what was going to happen that day. But it was with quite a bit of prep work that I finally felt comfortable for that day to take that plunge. I'll let you interject if you have any questions.
Sure. Yeah, I would. When you did take that plunge, were there some experiences that left a profound impression on you?
Sure. So that first day was a pretty intense one, and that first day I did get that epiphany, that life-changing, come out of it, crumpled mess on the floor. And again, not that everything was fixed, but more importantly, I had a spotlight shown on me. So a couple things about that first day. And I kind of go over the breakdown of the sessions and the hits, but I mentioned how I took roughly about 50 hits. And for anybody that has any experience with DMT, they know that that's a massive and crazy amount. Typically, it's if you can take 3 or 4 hits, you're being set off into some pretty deep spaces. But I spent about an hour and a half, and I spent that over about 8 sessions, and each session kept progressively getting deeper and deeper. But a few things that the initial first hit, in that first session, I ended up taking 3 hits, and it was out of a vape cartridge, so it was easy to to manage with a lighter and whatnot. The first sensations that I got, first of all, were just very natural and innate. It felt something that very familiar. Now, instantly, you're getting the sensory buzz and the hum and the vibration, and your sights and sounds are starting to warp instantly. And that's one of the beautiful things about DMT is it is the instant. But I didn't feel afraid. I felt as though the veil was kind of being removed. Not that I was being poisoned or that like with shrooms, you can very clearly tell that poison is entering into your bloodstream, that it is starting to affect you, and you're sitting there and you're kind of like waiting for it to come on, and it's can be not terrifying, but you know that you're getting poisoned. But with DMT, it was just the opposite. It almost felt like I was being cleared of the restrictions, that my senses were being enriched, enhanced, and increased, not dulled or lessened. But that first session was more of just a profound enjoyment of the sensory overload. It was kind of sit back, enjoy the show, but there was no epiphany, there was no DMT entities, there was no conveyance of information, there was no, there was no lessons learned. So with DMT as well, when you smoke it anyway, it only lasts 6, 7 minutes of really intense effects, but then you come back to full lucidity and you're fully capable of, kind of setting back in, integrating what just happened. There's no hangover period. So that's one of the beauties of DMT is you can have quite a bit of therapy in a short session. So I pushed it again a little bit further this time. Same thing, sights and sounds, comfortable, but no epiphany. Pushing it, and I'm kind of, rushing through the story. It is all outlined in the book, but long story short, I got about an hour and a half into it. I was getting, I felt like I was getting closer to the truth, but again, I hadn't had, like I said, there was no information download, there was no talking, it was just me kind of in this weird space. But that last session was completely different. And I pleaded to the universe, truly, like I need help. Like if I don't get some sort of input or answers here, I'm fucked. Like and there was no other way of wording it. And it was just I truly need help. And that last session, everything changed. So I took 5 or 6 big rips of from the pipe, and all of the sights and sounds stopped. There was no hum, there was no vibration, there was no spinning mandala effects. Everything just stopped, and I was in this suspended space where I wasn't propelled into a portal. I wasn't falling. I was just there and I was being. And the best way for me to describe the information that I got was that I had all of these proverbial dots in my head and in my psyche that I was trying to connect. And it was, how could I have all these tragedies from the past? What am I going to do now with the future? I've lost everything. I've got no job. I've got no money now. Like all of this crazy shit going on that I was trying to put together. And I kind of had this, best way for me to describe it is like a DNA download or some software upload where I instantly had all of my proverbial problems or dots connected. And those kind of shattered and blew up, and those 1,000 dots turned into 1,000,000. And then those all got connected, and then a billion, and then a trillion. And this conveyance of information was basically, listen, the point isn't to connect all the dots. It's to appreciate the space between the dots. It's to appreciate the quiet between the beat. It's to be here right now and just to understand that that's all you can be. And it sounds so basic, but that was the big take home message was, well, you only have this 1 second, and you that's all you have control over. And with the prior months of shroom work and psychedelic work, I kind of put it all in together where it was just like, wow, man, you need to take control of your own life. And I kept blaming external people and external situations for all the ills and all the stuff going wrong in my life. And I in an instant took account of how that all landed on my shoulders, how it all was accountable to me. And it was terrifying in essence because it was like, oh wow, I'm responsible for everything bad that happened. But it was such an empowering moment because then I knew that I could take control of my life, and that I could now start digging out of that hole and not banging my head up against the wall, doing the same stupid things like drinking all the time, or like yelling, or like fighting, or all the self-destructive things that was truly causing me to want to die. Um, and that was the day that after that last session, I took ownership of my life again, and I had an instantaneous joy and contentment. Now, it's hard to say that because all my life had blown up, but it was the happiest and most content that I've ever been. I'm getting goosebumps now just recounting it because it really was like the first time I'd felt contentment like that in basically my adult life. And that was now coming on 3 years ago, that first kind of DMT session. And um, I've had quite a few kind of profound shifts in some very deep sessions that have had some really profound effects on my current life now. But that first day was probably the big one that kind of just switched my perspective of looking for external solutions to my internal problems.
What do you think about DMT that affects the mental health? If someone watching this podcast, um, if they are experiencing depression, what do you think is about DMT experiences makes impact on mental health?
I think it finds the crack in your psyche, the subjective crack in someone's psyche that only you know is there. And that's where you can have, the best intentioned friends or therapist, or your doctor can prescribe you with medication with, trying to get to the root cause of things. But I think no one knows their inner trauma, their past, their limitations, that their just the crap that they think about themselves better than you. And you also know when you're lying to yourself, when you're deceiving, when you're going against your intuition and your gut. And I think again, psychedelics kind of give you, it's almost like a truth serum with yourself when you're having a conversation with God or with Source or whatever higher being that you have. And it's like I said, it can be horrible and terrifying when you have to open up the closet and pull back the rug and you have a lifetime's worth of shit that needs to come out. But again, the empowerment that comes from that and the ability to kind of shine a light on it, I think is probably one of the best attributes of psychedelics. Now that goes hand in hand though with people saying, when you hear the proverbial bad trip, or some of these, you can have experiences that are terrifying. Um, I've never had a bad trip, so to speak, where I've had like monsters or demons chasing me like it was a horror movie. But I've had some really painful ones where I had to look at myself and say, "Hey, you're an alcoholic. You're a narcissistic, belligerent asshole. You're treating these people like shit, which is why they don't want to be around you. You need to take accountability for all of these things." And that's, if anybody else would have said those things to me or about me, I would have got very defensive. I would have, shown you all of my accomplishments to say why you're wrong. But again, when you're just with yourself in a quiet room, several grams deep into shrooms, or like I said, 5 or 6 deep hits of DMT, there's no way, or ayahuasca even. Ayahuasca is big for coming through, and that main active ingredient in that is DMT. Um, where you're having these multiple hour long sessions where you're face to face with the truth. And that's where you know only you can hold up that mirror to yourself, and there's no way of adding any falsity to it or any bullshit. And that's probably the toughest but also the greatest aspect of psychedelics.
And do you think DMT helps us get into this state of self-awareness where something that points knows about you more than we know about ourselves, something that can point to things that we don't even notice about ourselves in day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that's the big picture of not only DMT but psychedelics, of deep meditation, of that there's a popular podcast now, the telepathy tapes, where there's all these nonverbal autistic children that are communicating through other means. Um, I just got back from the Monroe Institute where they study like out-of-body experiences and remote viewing. And I mention all of these things because ultimately, maybe even maybe not so much for your audience, but like the alien UFO disclosure and cryptids and Bigfoot and all of these things. And I hope I didn't just lose my credibility by saying it like that. But I feel like as humans, we are way greater than our normal five senses. And there are multiple ways of increasing not only the level to bring up our normal five senses that we have, so we can be way more refined in our sight and sound and taste and touch and all of those things, but that there are other extrasensory perceptions. Some being very empathetic, being telepathic, being able to astral project and disconnect from your physical body. But there's also, I'd say, dozens, if not hundreds. And this is where really I want to dedicate the rest of my life to exploring these extra states or expanded levels of altered consciousness that allow the human body to really tap into our true divine nature, which is way greater than what we normally experience. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's for survival. And that's maybe kind of the big picture of, what is our reality? Where is consciousness coming from? Is it something that's in our brain being projected out, or are we kind of receiving information? And it's like Aldous Huxley's reducing valve concept, where we have to really remove such a huge percentage of the information that we're surrounding ourselves with, including the microwaves and the gamma waves and the TV and radio station waves and all of those things, where with, 3 or 4 hits of DMT, you're instantly vibrating and humming at a much different frequency. You're resonating with information that normally you wouldn't be resonating with. And yeah, instead of having five senses dialed up to 10, you've got 50 senses dialed up to 100. Uh, and I think that's why, like, the initial pilot study with Strassman and his group, everybody kept coming out saying that this is more real than real. That's where the term spirit molecule got termed, because they kept coming out with these profound experiences where they felt as though they met God, or they had just these, ontologically shifting visions. And it's because how does it not be more profound or real if your data points are 1,000 as opposed to 10? And that's where I think the power of these altered states of consciousness can be really powerful, including lucid dreaming. People that have, epilepsy. You had Anthony Peake on your show. I'm a huge fan of his work and his books. He's got some amazing research that ties together these stories of, and take my story, take the telepathy tapes, or take any one of his stories. If any one of those are valid or true, and I think they are, or any of the stories coming out of the Monroe Institute, if any one of those is true, it's like, well, what does that mean for our everyday life? What does that mean for the next step of human evolution? What does that mean for our normal day-to-day living if we know how much, and it's easy for me to just say beauty, divine light, all of this amazing energy. There is the other side of that too. So I'm real about some of the shittier aspects of human psychology and whatnot. But I think for us to reach our full potential, and for us to start really loving and connecting with ourselves and then others around us, we have to think beyond our normal five senses. And psychedelics just is that quick, easy, right there cheat code. Not to be used all the time, and to be combined with other methods, but for some like myself, or for somebody that has major tragedy, sometimes that's what's needed to really just give you one more day.
So based on all the explorations you have done so far, what is your understanding about the nature of consciousness? Is it something we are projecting from our inside perspective on the outside, or is it a force field from which we are absorbing information?
I think it's the latter. And it's not that I'm looking for validation from other people or from other backgrounds, but it seems to be a very common area of conversation between some of the greatest minds of the world, and whether it be through quantum physics, whether it be through different just theories of reality, and just true, like, brass tacks neurochemistry and human physiology. we are way more than our physical body. We are way more than just our mind and body. And I think we're in this exciting kind of area of or time so where we're validating these ancient meditative practices of sitting on a mountaintop or going into a dark cave for weeks on end to have endogenous DMT induced, or these breathing methods. They're all kind of bringing us back to an elevated state that I think we can connect to our true self, or find our true self, and not have it be tainted by societal bullshit and pressures.
And when you, based on your experiences, do you feel like some of these entities, DMT entities, or aliens that people usually experience in DMT states, are they more advanced in the sense that they are in tune with this force field and they have some inherent knowledge about that, whereas now at least in our mainstream world, we don't take some of these things seriously about energy, or reading being able to sense someone's energy. It's not taken very seriously. Maybe in that realm, energy is the language with which entities interact, and perhaps they are more advanced in sensing or reading energy around them.
Yeah, I think in basic terms, vibration is information, or information is encoded on vibration and energy, and it really is just what mechanism or tool are we using? What lens or filter are we filtering through the fluid around us? And there's quite a bit of information out there, and that's where. And I kind of got sidetracked on your question about consciousness. Where does it come from? I think there's a lot of those great studies are showing that there is this collective consciousness kind of aspect to it, that there are certain archetypes or interactions of beings or entities that a lot of people are having, and not only in current times, but you go back in ancient history and ancient religious texts and stuff, and it seems to be people are having these type of spiritual out of body interaction with alien type stuff forever, and it's just a matter of what's the current terminology to try to discuss what it is. But that's if we can just if we can be comfortable in our own skin, get connected with ourselves, truly learn our inner purpose, our connection, all of those things, it becomes very easy to love yourself and to not self-sabotage. And then it becomes easier to love and interact with other people. And then it just becomes so easy to kind of just expand that out. And when you go into these realms or these states, I think that the information is to your point, conveyed at a different level of importance, and it's not like you're going in and listening to an English speaking person just read a text to you. You really are getting a download or an input, and it is life changing. And this is a point that I'd like to make too, that I don't think anybody can definitively prove, hey, I have the answer. I can tell you that this is not just a dream, or it's not just coming from my head. That's an important thing to study, and it's an important aspect of research. But I'm more more interested in the actual effects. So how many veterans have been saved by it, or feel as though they were suicidal and are not, or the people that have had these major tragedies in their life that horrible, but somebody lost their wife and their kids in an accident, and now, like, how do you move on with your life? How do you put that into perspective? And psychedelics, or access to these altered states sometimes allow for information that allows you to put that event into proper perspective, and it allows just your brain to work in a different way that you may need for that certain event. And people's lives really do come out changed. So how is it happening? I don't know, but does it happen? Yes, and it's countless and countless stories of people's lives being changed and affected by it. And I think that's where the importance of sharing this information is.
Yeah, that's good to know that there is there are alternative ways rather than getting locked into the construct that is presented to us over here in this dimension. You can kind of unlock and open up your mind to something else and try to solve from a different dimension.
Yeah, and once you've seen what's there, you take that back with you. You know, if you've experienced a ghost, or if you feel as though you can connect with your loved ones, or a past energy, or you know, in my particular case, I really do feel like I have a privilege that I can go into these realms and dimensions and ask for help and ask for guidance and get access to Akashic ancient information, and to have these, you know, archetypal teachers come to me. Now, whether that's just all in my head and it's all being produced in my brain, you know, maybe. I don't think it is. I really, because of the similarities of all the stories kind of tell me that we are kind of all tapping into this same space. But I feel as though I'm never alone with any of my problems. I always feel like I can tap into a higher energy to protect me. I feel like I can instantly induce goosebumps through happiness and joy. I feel like I can empathetically connect with people. You know, all of these new found abilities were found in that enhanced psychedelic space. But now I take them back to my, you know, to my normal working day, and I think that's kind of the ultimate point, is how do you integrate some of these lessons into today's hectic life? And that's the point, is we all got to kind of take a breath and relax and take some time for ourselves.
And going back to that question about DMT entities, and by the way, I have explored, when I first started this YouTube channel, I interviewed a lot of people about UFOs and aliens, so it's not anything out of scope
Good.
for this. So please feel comfortable speaking about UFOs. I love those topics. One thing I wanted to ask you was, do you think for some of those DMT entities or aliens in that dimension, are we sort of like open book for them to read, because we in this dimension we are not that advanced in terms of sensing energy or vibration as they are?
Yeah, and that's a maybe a good segue to bring in aliens potentially, because I think there is some similarity of the alien abduction story and some of the similarities of people experiencing pretty profound DMT entity interactions. So to go back to your question about some of the profound singular events of or DMT sessions that kind of left some impact, as those sessions progressed after that first day. So that first day, once again, really did a hardcore reset. It shined a spotlight on my issues, and it gave me a long list of things to work on that were actionable, that I could improve my life. So that you know, that in itself was absolutely cool, get me on the right path. But as those sessions started getting pushed and pushed further, there was this sense of other being alien entity interaction. And it started off kind of like I was a zoo animal on display, where, you know, I would smoke DMT and kind of pop into this elevated space. And then these entities would kind of look at me and shine on me and kind of glob on and be like, oh, look at who's this? What's this human consciousness doing here? Kind of like a firefly, you know, flashing in a dark field somewhere, where I would come into this space and they knew that I would be there. And it became kind of, so you hear a lot about like the jesters, or the kind of those fun interactions. That's how it initially started, where it really was, they were more interested in me. They were trying to find out more about what was going on in my brain. But over time, I felt as though I started being welcomed into that space, where I was then kind of showed some of the cool back of the house features. I was shown, you know, different aspects of that realm and dimension. But it was always kind of like them separate from me, and I'm just interacting with my friends. But then it did kind of progress, that there were times where I felt as though they were analyzing me, or that they were somehow kind of like invading my body in a different way, not in any kind of like sexual way or painful way, but just that I was being truly explored, and that they were just as happy or excited to see me than I was to them. Those interactions happened for quite a bit, and then I did have and this is probably the next kind of big profound, like, holy shit, how do you put that into context? Where I was very comfortable going into the space and dealing with other than me entities. What they were, I don't know, but some were more pleasant than others. Some had different looks, but there were clearly other things other than me. I did have one experience where I felt as though I had an interaction which was clearly with my future self, and it's kind of weird just to say that because it's like, well, what does that mean? It wasn't me with a longer beard or me as an older human. It just felt very distinctly comfortable me from a different space, a different dimension, a different time, where I was coming in to kind of do an analytical check of myself, to kind of do a diagnostic, for me to go in though and also calm me to be like, Adam, just, you're good, you're on path, like we're all here, we're all kind of, you're not alone through all of this. And that was also a very empowering experience because, and this is also common with most people that have done psychedelics, is you lose that fear of death. I have no fear of death. I know that my energy will transmute and carry on because I've interacted with it. Uh, and kind of a side tangent, but that's where I think like end of life and application of psychedelics is really, really big. Where if we can give people, whether that are terminally ill or just elderly, comfort into the passing of their energy through a good psychedelic experience, that's big. Um, but yeah, so there was that interaction where that kind of then opened up another areas of questions that I figured that I can answer in that space. But then I did also have some interactions that would, I think, more aligned with the alien kind of stories because, and is this people able to get their endogenous DMT elevated where maybe they are actually having a DMT trip that you can vibrate at levels similar to smoking external DMT? I think that can happen. I've personally, gotten my body to elevate to pretty high levels of endogenous DMT. But some of these interactions are insectoid-like. They do look kind of like this weird technical being, and a lot of times they go in and in my experiences, they show you how to properly use your human body. So they'll come in and show you how to breathe properly, how to vibrate properly, how to use all of these, extra senses. So like I mentioned, we have more than five. Well, what are they? These entities kind of come in and show you like a human guidebook or handbook on just how to truly run this body in all of its ways. And those are, again, how do you come back from an experience like that, try not to sound crazy, and but then have really profound positive effects come from it because now that you can run just more refined and enhanced. But yeah, those are challenging for the person that isn't quite ready to be taken over by an insectoid being and having your whole physiology shown how it was properly run. But
So do you feel like these beings are our kind of pointing towards our next steps towards consciousness? Maybe that's what we are moving towards.
that's what I'd like to think. I and I like I said, I'm not naive to think that there may not be a nefarious aspect or energies in this space as well. But I can honestly say that every one of my interactions have really been with, I felt as though the intent to teach me, to increase my ability to interact with others, to have a sense of divine connection to everything. Um, I, I, I feel that. And then maybe what gives me hope that it's not that it is kind of this next step of human evolution and that does transcend just me as an individual is that when I meet up with groups that have had similar experiences, whether it be that they've beaten suicide, whether it be that they're not alcoholic anymore, especially the people that have beat mental health issues with psychedelics, um, the genuine smile, the authenticity, the willingness to share your raw story, the willingness to donate your time, energy, and effort to save one another, that's to save, to help one another, to offer an empathetic and sympathetic ear, as well as a true physical hug of somebody. Um, it just becomes so natural and easy, and I just I think that's what's needed in today's society, where there's so much divisive, nasty speech, and there's so much separation based on wealth, on color, on sex, on gender, on political values, on all of those things, where the the true sense of self that one can find with psychedelics, it allows an amazing, authentic life for you to live. But I think the beauty of me living this way is that I extend that to everybody else that I come in contact with. So just like I feel as though I'm worthy to have my voice shared and that I should have my own opinion, and that because of my own experiences with my own lifestyle and everything, that this is where I'm at today. But everybody else that I interact with also has that right and that privilege. And I may not know all of their backstory. I may not know what they've been through. I haven't walked a mile in their shoes. And that doesn't mean that I agree with everybody or that I have to like everybody, but I don't judge anybody. I give people the space to speak. I give them the opportunity to have a difference of opinion. I certainly would never belittle anybody or try to put them down. And I think if that was the mentality of our policymakers, of our leaders, of our business owners, of our religious leaders, um, it there's no other way than to have a next step of human evolution where it is more about love and connection and positive interactions with other people. And two things on that point too. Not like there's not going to be any, traffic accidents or you're not going to stub your toe or that it's all going to be like kumbaya and everything's going to be perfect. No, no, like not at all. It's just you approach the solutions to the problems from an honest and authentic way. You're honest with yourself, you're honest with people that you come interactions with, and it just becomes an easy way to live because you're not worried about lying or deceiving or about screwing somebody over. Like you just like I never have to worry about lying because I just don't lie. Like I never have to worry about talking shit about anybody because I just don't talk shit about somebody. I never have to worry about being in a room that I don't feel comfortable being in because I'll trust my instincts and body and walk out. And yeah, if I think if most people would have the courage to actually face what they need to face, they would be able to shed some of the plaque that's holding us back. And then like I said, it just becomes easier to extend the helping hand to the next person if you're not using it to beat up yourself.
Yeah, I resonate with that point of view. I think rather than things being polarizing where it's right or wrong, maybe in future we have the freedom to explore in whichever direction we want to go without judging each other. If someone is making choice of going in a certain direction, it's up to they have the freedom to do that. Whereas, and if we don't resonate with that, we have the freedom to explore something else.
Yeah, and probably the most practical application of this would be in a intimate or loving relationship where I know in my personal life, like I lost three-term relationships with three amazingly beautiful women who, again, in retrospect, not that that I have to say it's 100% my fault, but man, I wouldn't want to hung out with me either. But part of doing the inner work and the shadow work is you become you don't try to change the other person in front of you, like I mentioned, but you actually get to embrace the differences. You get to, in my particular case, I was able to enhance or understand and absorb the feminine aspects of myself, which then allowed me to see it in the women that I was with. And I think in today's society, a lot of men have that this kind of like macho alpha male where it's all about, the the caveman style type dominance male. And again, I was this crying little boy of a mess, but I was backing it or I was hiding it behind all of my financial successes and the money and the cars and the wealth and the pretty women and all of those things where like it was just causing so much harm and destruction in my life until I actually embraced it and I was able to understand the differences of emotion and I was able to understand the beauty of the difference of perspective where now I'm in a relationship where those same quirks that those other women had that would cause a fight and would cause a night to be ruined. Now they cause a laughter and a joke and a hug and an impromptu dance session. And it's because I'm appreciating the differences. I'm appreciating the femininity. I'm appreciating that you're taking the extra 10 minutes to do your hair or all of those differences. But that, again, that applies to when you're interacting with kids, so great for teachers because you can't treat a kid like an adult. just like you can't treat the elderly person like they're not at the end of their life, or um, people that have different disabilities or different access to their physiology. Like it just, you really love and embrace all of these different things, and you don't judge, and you become really connected with everybody around you. And it's like I said, it almost becomes impossible to be nasty and deceitful and want to bring people down and want to, like, you all you want to do is keep sharing the love and light and positive energy. Like how, so my opinion, what's that mean for evolution? I think there's either going to be a speciation event where all like the jackasses and all the the jerks that are mean and shitty, well then they're going to speciate off into some whatever. I don't know what they are, but maybe the enlightenedly whatever tuned people, or the people that have kind of resonate at a higher level, will speciate into something that's, I don't know, more spiritually connected, or just ready for the next step. I don't know if that's, we leave this planet and go someplace else, if we go within, if we, whatever that means, I don't quite know, but I know it's not destruction of ourselves, of the planet, of our resources, and just banging our heads against the wall. That's definitely not where this species can go, because we'll self-destruct very quickly.
And speaking about next steps of consciousness, from your point of view, what do you think are the qualities of those next steps of consciousness? Is it like being able to step out of the limitation of space and time, based on what you have experienced in DMT world?
I think empathy is a big part of it. I think for you to feel, and again, that doesn't mean you need to agree with somebody's circumstances. That doesn't mean you need to necessarily like help out of pocket. That doesn't mean you need to have a desire to fix or change. I think just giving yourself the space and courage to be yourself with all of your uniqueness and all your weirdness, um, that that takes away a lot of the competition. That takes away a lot of the fighting for resources. So I think just empathy and connection with your fellow person is I think a big part of what that next step looks like. And maybe, and this is going to be maybe so too basic, but to not have our senses dumbed down by alcohol, by prescription pills, by social media smut, by people looking at their phone for 8 hours of the day. I think that there's so much potential in taking an hour to do yoga, to, taking a walk in the woods. It doesn't have to be, this deep philosophical jump into the psychedelic realm, or you've got to start reading, all of these esoteric ancient wisdom things, or you've got to spend 3 hours in a cold plunge. I think it's just knowing how divinely beautiful our human body is, and however we individually explore that's going to be a different path for everybody. But there's so many people that talk bad about themselves, are sabotaging themselves, are their own worst enemies, and I was a perfect example of that, where to the point where I was truly going to take myself off the planet. And again, on paper, to look at what I had, it would be, how can that possibly be? If anybody should be thriving and happy and amazing to be a human, it should be him. And yet, for some reason, I was just so bogged down with my own internal shit. And um, so I know the light and the shift and the change and the transformation that can happen. And if that can happen on an individual basis, what can that happen, in a group mentality, in a society, in a state, in a country? And yeah, that's just more love, more empathy, more connection, more understanding, and more just feeling comfortable and grateful for the human experience, and not trying to ascend it to this 5D dimension, or not trying to get, strictly in your astral body, or always trying to leave this. The beauty is actually being in this 3D meat suit. The beauty is taking the experiences and the knowledge of these elevated states, but then applying them to our everyday, because then that's where every cup of coffee, every walk in the woods, like I said, every beautiful experience is multiplied, and it makes being a human fun. And that's maybe like the biggest part of all of this. Like, it's so easy to not be an alcoholic. It's so easy to not be stressed and anxious and with all of the crap because it just feels so good. Like it's so easy to be in a loving relationship where you're not yelling and screaming at one another because it's so much better to hold hands and skip and laugh. And not naive to say that we don't have our problems. If anything, I now have more kind of problems that I got to work out of for the financially and business wise and all of those things. But every day is just an amazing experience of just fantastic interactions of vibrational energy from people, from things, from plants, from animals, from DMT entities, from the universe, where before I was blocking all of that out.
Those are some great insights. Thanks for sharing that, Adam. And continuing on that point of next steps of consciousness, I'm curious to hear from you. Is there, are there suffering, like you have experienced some of these states in DMT, so I'm just curious, do they have suffering in those, even in those elevated states, or does the nature of suffering, is it different, or does it dissipate away because it becomes a matter of self-responsibility in those states?
I don't think it dissipates or goes away. If anything, it's probably enhanced, multiplied, dissected further. Um, you seem to go within deeper, and I think you find its root source, which again, what is the root source of anything and everything? I don't know. Is it consciousness? Is it just this experience that we're having? But no, it doesn't make everything just rosy and bright and unicorns and sparkles. It if anything, it can be even more heavy or more profound, but um, it's not seen by it through a filter of bullshit. I mean that's really the best way to say it. Like you really are just you're there. You're when you're in those psychedelic spaces. Well, with shrooms and DMT in particular, um, you're closer to reality than further, in my opinion. And DMT kind of notches it one step up, where you're kind of getting access to back of the house, like how this stuff really how this stuff really operates. And I don't think anybody will come out of there with a definitive answer to be like, oh yeah, like I've seen it all, so now I know. If anything, you come out with probably more questions than answers, and more astonishment, and more, holy shit, what does this mean? And that's the excitement of being part of this research group, or not even necessarily movement. Like, perfect example, I was in Boston last night for a group conference on plant-based medicines, and there were so many personal stories there of similar to me, like how I literally life-changing. And without detail, just a perfect example. There was this young man who had debilitating OCD, where he was basically saying he was bed bound, where he could barely even leave his house. He was suicidal. He connected with somebody at like a suicide walk, reach out type thing. And long story short, started experimenting with shrooms, and now he's to the point where he was on stage as a speaker. He's writing policy. He's actually talking with like the senators in the state of Mass. He's putting together all of this amazing stuff, and now he's a resource to go to for the community, including the lawmakers and policymakers. And there were police there. Like they're looking to this young man to help change policy, where a few years ago he was locked up in his room with debilitating mental health issues, thinking about taking his life. And a couple sessions with some deep meditation and some shrooms, and now he's a young man out truly trying to save lives. And there's just so many stories of similar things like that I think warrant further exploration. And I know there'll be a lot of people that still would say that these are drugs, or they're just against um, using a powerful tool like this. And I understand, and they're entitled to those opinion. And for them, I would say it's not for them. And if you have those types of feelings or gut reactions to psychedelics, then I wouldn't approach them. But there are many people like myself that feel as though that they were called to them and approached it with the right respect and reverence, and with the desire for therapy and help. And uh, the power for change is undeniable. And I think it's a movement that the more people that are willing to share their vulnerable stories, and kind of lay it all out on the table, it gives other people the comfort to do the same. And that's what I'm hoping by sharing my message, which is why I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, because I tend to be talking to a lot of like middle-aged men who are going through alcohol issues, or are really big into the UFO scene, or so it's I'm excited to be able to talk with a different demographic and a different group of people, with your listeners, because I think mental health and suicide is very close to, I bet, every one of your listeners. If not them personally, then there's somebody in their family that has a mental health issue and may be suicidal. And uh, I encourage, if nothing else, if this story could, you know, push that story forward. If you have a loved one who you think may be in a depressed state, talk to them, ask them, bring up this conversation. And even if it's just, oh, no, DMT and shrooms are not for me, okay, then what is? Then let's go meditate. Let's go for a walk. There's other ways, but um, to just run from these conversations of mental health, or to hide them like I was by material success, or hey, look at all the stuff I have. It doesn't work, and it'll catch up to you. Where, man, like I said, come to the other side, and to be happy and vibrating and connecting with source, and it's awesome. It's a good place to be, and it's a story I want to share, not sitting at the bar depressed, being like life sucks, because life doesn't suck. You just got to kind of switch your perspective.
Absolutely. I think it's super, super, super helpful to know that there is an alternative way, or an alternative solution, rather than the mainstream solution, of which is more like bandit fixes, where it's just soothing the symptoms rather than getting to the core of the issue. So I really appreciate that you're introducing this alternative solution to the public. It's which is most likely more profound than what's being some of these prescription medications, or just trying to escape the reality by drinking, uh, and putting yourselves on pills.
Yeah, it doesn't help anybody. For you to be the best mom, dad, boss, employee, friend, you name it. You take care of yourself first, and that's kind of the big overarching message is self-love. To learn about yourself, to truly know about yourself, to love yourself, and to know that you're worthy. And like I said, that's going to be a different story for everybody, but um, take your life back, take your power back, and and we can we could probably talk about this for hours, about like practical ways of doing this. But who is your inner circle? Who are the people around you? Take a look at the type of people that you're hanging with, because I can say that after now not being involved in alcohol for over 4 years, from not just being based on money and status and things, my inner circle now is so tight, and is so interested in my well-being and my health and my happiness, that I don't think I would ever even be able to slip as far back as I did before, because I've got such a great group of people that are there to build me up and to lean on and to help. And um, you know that that's a big part of what I think everybody needs to do too, is find that inner circle, or that mastermind group of people that you can kind of resonate with, and have a support group. And like life is tough. It's not going to ever necessarily get easy, but I can tell you it can be fun, it can be enjoyable, and it can be something that you want to live. And um, it's right there for everybody. And to tie it into, maybe for the people that aren't necessarily interested in doing an external drug, or to smoke DMT, we mentioned about that it is endogenous, excuse me, that it is produced in your own body. And there are ways through breathing exercises, through kind of like Wim Hof type methods, and holotropic breathing, where you really can get your body to produce really elated states. And with practice, you can you can really get high on your own kind of natural biology. And I would encourage, um, people to look into that aspect of it if they're not all that interested in actually doing, an external dose of DMT. Work on your own, and that's all the physiology in your body. There's a lot of talk now about like brain heart coherence and just having that connection and having everything run together. And it's very clear when your body is out of line and stressed and in this fight or flight mode, and when you can't sleep and everything is just stressing you out. And then it's very clear when you're in a normal, healthy state. And so I know for myself, I hadn't experienced that healthy state for years. So that was kind of the big epiphany to be like, oh wow, I can live without being stressed or anxious. I can go to bed with happy thoughts and not depressed. I can approach going to the store or market without no worrying about having road rage on the way or wanting to beat somebody up in line. Like it was, and it sounds so simple, but for me at 40 years old to finally get through where I could live through life and society not so pent up and angry and mean and nasty was way better for society, but so much, better for me. It's just, like I said, it feels good. It makes it easy.
Thank you so much for sharing all these insights. This has been, for sure, I think this is a very important message to share with the audience today, and this alternative path of healing yourself. So I deeply appreciate you having this conversation with me. If someone from the audience want to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect with you?
So I do make myself accessible. If anybody has any questions about the book or DMT, but also just, and I say this very sincerely, and I had quite a few people take me up on it, which is why I continue to say it. If anybody is in a really dark or shitty place and they really do just need somebody to talk to, or if, you need one person to tell you, hey, this world would be a better place if with you on it. I'm very comfortable that I can come up with several reasons why this place would be better with you on it. So I offer my email address. It's booksbyadambutler@gmail.com. If you want to get in touch with me personally, I've offered a free PDF version of my book to anybody that wants it. So, my book is available on Amazon. You can buy a paperback copy. I have an audio version, Kindle version. But if anybody wants the information or the message for free, I'll happily send a copy out to anybody, like I said, through that email. And my hope and my goal is to continue making connections like this, to continue kind of sharing my story, but also continuing to absorb other people's stories, like that young man that I met last night, where I'm getting goosebumps looking at this young guy, being like, man, you're gonna change the world, and it's just because of a perspective shift. And man, if I can help be a part of that movement, if I can help just kind of change one person's perspective by sharing my story, then that's what I'm here for. And it's been a heck of a run the last couple of years, which is why I keep doing what I'm doing. And I feel like the message is resonating because it's needed. People need a people need to know they're not alone and that there's options out there.
Thank you so much, Adam. I think this is a very valuable message, and I commend you for doing this work. Your empathy is palpable. It's very nice to have someone in the public space who is open to connect and have these conversations in person. Because especially if someone is in a very dark space, it can be like, it's helpful to talk to someone who has been able to come out of it.
And reaching back on that gentleman last night that I was talking to, in that part of the speakers on the stage, two of them were doctors, and these beautiful women that are dressed all in business suits, and there are a lot of people that won't take advice unless it comes from a doctor or a scientist. The people in the lab coats or the white suits, and I understand that and I respect that. But there is also a huge group of people that will not take advantage or advice or input from the scientists and the doctors or the big pharmacy, and the message needs to come from, like, this kid was wearing a winter hat and kind of ripped jeans and a scrubby shirt, and it's like, well, that's because he's going to resonate and his message is going to connect with the people that the doctors may not. And I think that that's a really important part of my story too, is be comfortable being your new, unique, weird self. You know, shine your special, bright, sparkly, iridescent light just the way it is. Find your own group of misfits. Don't change to be part of somebody else. And authenticity will always resonate. And yeah, so you know, if you're more inclined to listen to the doctors, to the the PhD students, there's a lot of great people doing research out there, and I'm friends with a lot of them, and I connect with a lot of them, on a weekly basis. But if it's more important to kind of get, grassroots, the people that actually walk in the streets where it's helped them and saved their lives, I've got a great group of people that I can share with people as well too, where it's like, no, this is real life type stuff, where moms and dads and brothers and sisters are here on this planet still because somebody gave them the time. So
Yeah, I can see that. I would rather speak to someone who has had that problem and was able to walk out of it versus someone who has just studied it, because it's with professional doctors and professional people. I feel like sometimes it becomes too impersonal. They
yeah.
haven't experienced those issues personally.
And people feel like they're being judged or criticized. Where like and this is where, it's I can say it now with almost a chuckle and a smile, but it's like I've lost everything. I've had everything taken away from me. Like I there's so many embarrassing stories that it almost makes it. I'm not worried about going into any conversation with anybody because I've already exposed all of my my inner workings. I'm giving you everything I have, uh, and I encourage you to be an open book as well. And that sometimes people need to hear that. Rightly so. Like actually, a great example. I have a doctor who is in Australia who is actually helping people overcome depression and anxiety and is using psychedelics with this. And he reached out to me to kind of to talk to share stories because he's like, I have to kind of keep this facade, and it's not a facade, but I have to keep this image of professional in nothing can be wrong in my life. Everything has to be perfect, and I can't even really share fully with my therapist because then my medical license would be potentially in jeopardy. And it's like, and I can see this guy really having this internal struggle where he just needs another guy to talk to. Like he just needs somebody that's not going to judge him, that's not going to say you're a piece of shit, that's not going to say, oh well, I'm going to take your license. And um, I end my book with the chapter "Love Thy Neighbor," and perfect way to maybe end the podcast here, where it's really important to be that shoulder to lean on for somebody because you never know when you may need that. And I started off my journey in my book full of hatred and destruction, and I wanted to kill myself and blow up society with me. And I felt as though I had all the means to do it. And it ended with this kind of kumbaya, love and connection and love your neighbor type deal. And it may be corny, but it's so true, and it's what my whole life is about now because I know that just being a human for other people can be exactly what's needed because that's what was needed for me. And sometimes that's it, man. Just be the person that can be an empathetic ear, give the hug. If you love somebody, tell them you love them, and don't be afraid to share your story because that may be the opening that someone's looking for to share their story.
Thank you so much, Adam. I really enjoyed this conversation. And you're welcome back to this channel if whenever you feel like sharing any more of your insights. I hope I was able to cover some initial ones today, but you're more than welcome to come back and share more as your work evolves more and more.
Well, thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with you as well, and thank you for sharing me with your audience. I know you do this with passion and with love, and that it's something that's close to you. So, thank you for sharing me with your friends. I mean that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to the audience. If you like this, if you benefit from some of these insights, please share your feedback. It's super helpful to know. So thank you.